I knew something was off when I found tire tracks leading straight into my barn. It was early Saturday morning, dew still clinging to the grass, and I was heading out to feed my horses like I did every day. I'm Orion Zeller. I'm not the kind of guy who enjoys drama, but ever since I bought this 5-acre property on the edge of the Willow Creek development, the HOA's been trying to drag me into their circus. I'm not even in their jurisdiction, but that hasn't stopped them from trying to rope me in. And leading the charge, Karrenna Bellamy, the HOA president with a haircut as sharp as her tongue and a voice that could peel paint off a fence. She's the kind of woman who'll measure your grass with a ruler and still find a reason to fine you. But this was new. I stood at the open barn door, staring at a shiny black SUV parked right between my hay bales and my horse trailer. My horses, Jasper and Whiskey, stood off to the side, tails flicking, clearly unimpressed by the intrusion. I didn't recognize the vehicle, but I didn't need to. The Willow Creek HOA president magnet stuck to the back window told me all I needed to know. I walked up, my boots crunching over straw. The barn smelled of cedar, leather, and now, overpriced perfume. I knocked on the window. Karrenna sat in the driver's seat, talking on her phone like she was parked in a Starbucks lot, not trespassing on private farmland. She rolled down the window, finally noticing me. "Oh, hi," she said with a fake smile. I just needed a place to park while I coordinated a few neighborhood inspections. "In my barn?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well," she said, waving her hand like I was overreacting, "your property is such an eyesore from the main road, I figured you wouldn't mind if it served some purpose." I took a breath. "Karrenna, this is private land, you're trespassing," she laughed. "Technically, the HOA voted to adopt your parcel into the Extended Community Oversight Zone." I blinked. "That's not a thing." "It is now," she said, shutting her window and picking up her phone again. That's when Whiskey started moving. "Now my horses are gentle. But they've been trained since they were colts to nudge out raccoons, dogs, and yes, people who don't belong. It's a trick I picked up from my uncle back in Montana. They don't kick, don't bite, they just lean." Hard, Whiskey nudged the back of her SUV just enough to make it rock slightly. Karrenna glanced in the rearview mirror, annoyed. Then Jasper joined in. 2,000 pounds of horseflesh started pushing like a couple of living forklifts. The SUV groaned, tires squealing over the wood floor as Karrenna shouted, "Hey, stop that!" I didn't stop them. "Maybe leave before they get curious about your side mirrors," I said. "Call them off," she shrieked, fumbling for reverse. "I would," I said, crossing my arms, "but according to your HOA, this is officially community property now. Sounds like they're just inspecting it." When she finally backed out, hay clinging to her bumper and one side mirror slightly tilted, she rolled her window down again. "This isn't over, Mr. Zeller. You'll be hearing from the board." I tipped my hat. "Looking forward to it." I watched her SUV disappear down the gravel drive, dust kicking up in her wake. I knew Karrenna well enough to know she'd be back, and next time she wouldn't come alone. But what she didn't know was that I'd already started documenting everything, and I had a plan. By Monday morning, I was already 3 steps ahead of whatever nonsense Karrenna thought she had in store. I spent Sunday installing 2 more security cameras, one over the barn entrance and another aimed at the back gate. I wasn't taking any chances. I also printed out a few still frames from the footage of her SUV in the barn next to my horses, time-stamped and dated. That footage would become a linchpin. At 7:30, I walked the property line with my land plat in hand. I snapped pictures showing the clear boundary markers, all legally recorded with the county. The last thing I wanted was to let that woman twist a single inch of my land into her fantasy jurisdiction. Around noon, the first sign of escalation arrived, not with a bang, but a single envelope. No postage, hand-delivered. HOA letterhead across the top, inside. A violation notice stating I was in breach of Willow Creek community appearance standards for unauthorized animal housing, non-conforming paint colors, and improper vehicle storage. I laughed. My barn's been red for 6 years. My trailer is licensed and parked well within my fence. And as for the horses, they've been here longer than Willow Creek's HOA has existed. I walked straight to my office and pulled out the file I'd started months ago. Every letter, every flyer, every incident. I added the new violation to the stack, then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Zeller," came the voice on the other end. "Hey, Ray, you still with the county zoning department, retired last year?" "Why?" "Because I think someone's trying to rewrite the map." Tuesday morning, Ray met me at the diner off Highway 12. He didn't waste time. "Got your parcel pulled up last night," he said, flipping open a manila folder. "You're zoned agricultural. No HOA has any legal authority over your land. They'd need to annex your property through the city council, and that takes a hearing, a petition, and a whole lot of paperwork." None of which happened. Exactly. I explained what Karrenna had done, including the fake violation and the stunt in my barn. Ray looked up from his coffee. "You want me to make some calls?" "Not yet. Let's see how far she pushes it first." By Thursday, I had my answer. The gravel at the end of my driveway had been torn up, ruts dug deep, like someone peeled out in a hurry. Someone had planted a laminated HOA sign just outside my gate with the words "Community Maintenance Area, No Trespassing" bolted into a wooden post. They were trying to claim my easement. I didn't touch it. I just took photos, lots of them, from every angle. Then I drove straight to the county clerk's office and filed a formal complaint for property encroachment. I included a copy of my deed, the survey map, and the photos. That night, I pulled the memory card from the camera above the gate. The footage showed two of the HOA board members, Glenn and Tracy, sneaking up in a golf cart around 2 in the morning. They dug the post, hammered it in, then sped off. Trespassing, vandalism, unlawful signage. I made 3 flash drives of the video and tucked them into 3 different locations. One went to my attorney, one to the sheriff's department, and the last I kept for myself. Friday morning, I got a knock. Karrenna stood on my porch in a peach blazer and matching heels, flanked by Glenn and Tracy. Behind them idled a landscaping truck and a second SUV, both bearing the Willow Creek logo. "Mr. Zeller," she said, glancing around like she owned the place. "We're here to perform a compliance inspection and remove unauthorized structures." I leaned on the doorframe. "You brought a landscaping crew to tear down my barn." She gave me a tight smile. "We've received numerous complaints. It's a matter of community standards." "You still think this is part of Willow Creek?" "I don't think," she said. "I act. And I act on behalf of the board." I nodded once, stepped back, and pulled out my phone. I tapped the sheriff's number, put it on speaker, and let it ring. She blinked. "You're calling the police?" "No," I said. "I'm reporting a premeditated attempt to damage private agricultural property." "You're just lucky I already filed the trespass complaint and submitted your little midnight sign stunt to the county." Tracy shot a glance at Glenn, who went pale. Karrenna's mouth twitched, but she didn't move. "Sheriff's office," came the voice. "This is Deputy Hart." "Deputy, this is Orion Zeller. I'm at my property on East Hollow Road. I've got 3 individuals attempting to enter and remove structures from private land using fabricated authority. I've already submitted a formal complaint and provided video evidence of previous trespassing." There was a pause. Then, "Stay on the line. Patrol cars en route. Do not let them enter." I looked at Karrenna. "You heard the man." She stepped back, visibly rattled. "This is harassment." "No," I said. "This is me protecting my land from fraud." The squad car showed up in under 10 minutes. Deputy Hart stepped out, tall and calm, hand resting near his belt. Karrenna tried to interrupt him with a flurry of legalese, but Hart held up a hand. "Ma'am, I've reviewed the footage Mr. Zeller submitted. You and your associates are clearly on his property without permission at 2:05 in the morning. That's criminal trespassing." She started to protest again, but he turned to Glenn and Tracy. "You two are also seen placing unauthorized signage. That's vandalism." "You can't arrest us," Glenn muttered, but his voice cracked. "No one's under arrest yet," Hart said, but if you set foot on this property again without a court order, I'll have no choice." Karrenna's face hardened. "We'll see you in civil court." As they retreated to their vehicles, Hart turned to me. "You want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's see if they're smart enough to walk away," he nodded. "Keep everything documented. And if they come back, call me directly." That night, I emailed my attorney. We weren't just collecting evidence anymore. We were building a case, one that would expose how far this HOA would go to strong-arm people out of their rights. The game had changed, and I was done playing defense. By Sunday morning, word had spread like wildfire across the neighborhood. I hadn't said a word publicly, but apparently someone had. Maybe Glenn or Tracy, maybe one of the landscapers with a conscience. Either way, folks were talking, and not in hushed tones. At the feed store, I overheard two guys trading stories about the HOA queen who got run off by a couple of horses, and laughing hard enough to knock over a stack of seed bags. I didn't correct them. Let the legend grow, but my focus wasn't on gossip. I was preparing for whatever came next. And I had a feeling something was brewing. That feeling was confirmed Monday afternoon when I received a certified letter, this time from a law office. Not a court summons, but a cease and desist order. It accused me of harassment, intimidation, and endangerment of HOA officials during lawful inspections. It had Karrenna's fingerprints all over it. I read it twice, then once more just to admire the gall. They were now trying to paint me as the threat. I scanned the signature block. The attorney's name was Lionel Beck. I knew the name. He was a fixer, the kind of lawyer that hovers around real estate boards and shady developer deals like a vulture around a carcass. His office was in a strip mall near the freeway. I'd seen him once at a zoning board meeting, arguing that a drainage ditch shouldn't stop a luxury condo project from going forward. I wasn't intimidated. But I wasn't going to ignore it either. I called my attorney, Maria Sandoval, and forwarded the letter. She called me back within the hour. "This is bluff work," she said. "They're posturing, but it does mean they're worried." "Good," I said. "I want them scared." Maria paused. "We could preempt them, file a restraining order, maybe even a civil suit for trespass and attempted seizure of property." I considered it. "Not yet. Let them write more checks they can't cash." By Wednesday, my patience paid off. It started with a phone call from Ray, the retired zoning guy. He sounded winded. "You need to see this," he said. "Check the county bulletin online." Something's up. I pulled up the website and clicked on the latest agenda for the Planning Commission. There it was, buried under line items about signage ordinances and park maintenance. Petition 47B proposed incorporation of Parcel 16B into Willow Creek Community Zoning Overlay. That was my land. They were trying to backdoor it through a zoning overlay, a legal trick that let HOAs extend certain rules without full annexation. It wouldn't give them ownership, but it could allow them to impose fines and restrictions on properties previously outside their reach. And they'd scheduled the hearing for Friday morning, 2 days, and no one had notified me. Which, according to the law, was a violation all on its own. I drove straight to the county building and asked for the full petition file. The clerk hesitated but handed it over. Inside were falsified documents, fabricated signatures from neighbors claiming to support the overlay, including one from a man who'd passed away last year. There was even a doctored map that moved the eastern boundary of Willow Creek right over my front gate. I photographed every page and left the originals untouched. Then I called Maria again. "This isn't just a zoning issue anymore," she said after I sent her the files. "This is criminal fraud, forgery, misrepresentation, probably conspiracy." I gave her the green light to escalate. By Thursday morning, the county prosecutor's office had the file. And by Thursday afternoon, 2 investigators showed up at Maria's office to collect statements. I gave mine under oath, detailing every interaction, every document, every unwanted visit. Friday came fast. I arrived at the county hearing early, wearing a clean flannel shirt and jeans. The room was already half full. A few of my neighbors stood near the back, whispering. The HOA board filed in together, dressed like they were heading to a corporate gala. Karrenna took a seat near the front, legs crossed, a binder on her lap. Maria sat beside me, calm and unreadable. When the commission called Petition 47B, Karrenna stood and launched into a rehearsed speech about preserving community integrity and aligning adjacent properties with shared values. She never mentioned my name. She didn't need to. Then it was my turn. I approached the podium and placed 3 documents on the table: my deed, the county's own zoning map, and a printed image of the forged petition signatures. "My name is Orion Zeller," I said, voice steady. "I own parcel 16B. I was never notified of this hearing, which is a violation of county code. Furthermore, several of the signatures on this petition are fraudulent, including at least one from a deceased individual. The map submitted has been digitally altered to misrepresent the boundary line." There was a ripple across the room. One commissioner leaned forward. "You're saying this petition contains forged documents?" "Yes," I said, "and I've submitted copies to the county prosecutor's office." "I believe an investigation is already underway." Karrenna stood up abruptly. "This is slander." "Sit down, Miss Bellamy," the chairwoman snapped. "You'll have your turn." One of the commissioners whispered to a staffer who left the room in a hurry. The hearing was adjourned within 10 minutes, pending legal review of submitted materials. The vote wasn't even held. Outside, the air was tense. Karrenna caught up to me in the parking lot, her heels clicking fast. "You think you've won something?" she hissed. "No," I said. "I think you just lost everything." She opened her mouth, but a black SUV pulled up beside us. 2 men in plain clothes stepped out and flashed badges. "Miss Bellamy," one said, "we need a few minutes of your time." Her face froze. "On what grounds?" "Forgery, falsification of public records, and conspiracy to commit zoning fraud," the agent replied without missing a beat. She looked at me with something between disbelief and fury. Then they escorted her to the vehicle, not in handcuffs but close. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. The fallout came over the next week. Glenn and Tracy resigned from the board. 3 other members were subpoenaed. The county froze all HOA actions until an audit could be completed. The overlay proposal was officially withdrawn, but the best part: the HOA charter was amended under pressure from a coalition of residents to require direct property owner consent before any future zoning proposals could include outside parcels. They called it the Zeller Clause. I didn't ask for it, but I appreciated the gesture. The barn stayed just the way it was. Red paint, hay stacked high, and Jasper and Whiskey standing guard like a couple of 4-legged bouncers. I never heard from Karrenna again, and no one ever parked in my barn without permission after that. The following Tuesday, the county prosecutor filed formal charges against Karrenna Bellamy and 2 former HOA board members, Glenn Wright and Tracy Pulaski, for document falsification, unlawful entry, and attempted zoning fraud. The charges weren't just symbolic. The forged petition had been submitted to a government agency, and that crossed the line into felony territory. I hadn't planned to attend the arraignment, but I ended up going after Maria called to tell me the court had decided to make it public due to the community interest. When I walked into the courthouse, I was surprised to see a dozen familiar faces from the neighborhood already seated. Some waved, others nodded. No one looked particularly sympathetic to the defendants. Karrenna walked in wearing a muted gray pantsuit. No HOA magnet, no clipboard, no air of command. Her expression was unreadable as she sat beside her attorney, Lionel Beck. Glenn looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. Tracy didn't make eye contact with anyone. The judge read the charges, asked for pleas, and set the next hearing for early summer. No one spoke except the attorneys. The moment was clinical, quiet, and heavy with consequences. I left without saying a word to them. The next few weeks passed without incident on my land. I kept my cameras running, but there were no new signs of tampering. Jasper and Whiskey seemed more relaxed too. They'd grown used to the quiet again, and I made sure their routine stayed steady. One afternoon, while I was repairing a fence on the far side of the pasture, a city truck pulled up near the gate. A woman stepped out, holding a clipboard and wearing a navy blue windbreaker with the city seal. "You Orion Zeller?" she asked, walking up to the fence line. "That's me. Lana Cho. I'm with the Municipal Compliance Office. I'm part of the task force reviewing HOA operations in the area. Mind if I ask you a few things?" I set down my post driver and nodded. She flipped through a few pages. "We received whistleblower information suggesting that Willow Creek HOA may have accessed the county GIS system using credentials they weren't authorized to have." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "That would explain how they doctored the parcel maps." "Exactly," she said. "We're trying to determine how they got access and whether any city employees were involved. You ever give them access to anything?" "Never. I've been trying to keep them off my property since the day I moved in." She scribbled something down. "Appreciate your time. We'll be in touch if we need a formal statement." As she left, I walked back to the barn and looked over the pasture. The grass was greening up and the air carried the first hints of spring. Then, 2 days later, things took another turn. Maria called just after dinner. "They raided the Willow Creek HOA office this afternoon," she said. "Search warrant executed by the county sheriff's office, computers, files, everything, and they found something big." I stood motionless by the sink. "How big?" "There's evidence that HOA dues were being funneled into a private LLC registered under Karrenna's husband's name. A fake maintenance company. They billed for landscaping that never happened and pocketed the money. Over $70,000 in the last 18 months. I leaned against the counter. "That's embezzlement." "Correct. New charges are being prepared, multiple felonies. And since HOA funds are considered fiduciary assets, they could be facing major prison time." That night, I went through every document I had one more time, making sure I hadn't missed anything. I wasn't going to be blindsided again. By the end of the week, Karrenna and her husband were both arrested. The sheriff's department released a statement confirming that the Willow Creek HOA was under full audit, with its charter temporarily suspended until a third-party administrator could be appointed. The neighborhood's finances were frozen. No dues, no fines, no enforcement. I didn't celebrate. I worked. I spent the next several days helping my neighbors clean up a few damaged fences, haul out debris from a drainage ditch the HOA had neglected, and install a new community board by the old mailboxes. We didn't talk about Karrenna. We talked about gardens, livestock, and spring projects. One evening, I was brushing down whiskey when a car pulled up just outside the fence. I didn't recognize it, but the man who stepped out looked familiar. Late 50s, gray stubble, worn Carhartt jacket. He raised a hand. "You Zeller?" "Yeah, I'm Don Merrill. Used to own the parcel southeast of yours. Sold it 3 years ago when Willow Creek started leaning on me. Thought I was the only one they tried to strong-arm." I opened the gate. "You're not." He walked over and shook my hand. "Heard what you did, not just about the charges. Heard you stood your ground, that matters. Appreciate it. You ever think about coming back? Not to that HOA, but maybe somewhere nearby. If folks are standing up now, maybe it's worth it again." We talked for a bit, traded a few names of people we both knew, then parted ways. The following month, the court held a restitution hearing. Residents packed the room. Many had been fined for infractions that had no basis in the bylaws. One woman testified that she'd paid over $2,000 for a fence review that never happened. Another man, an Army vet, said they threatened foreclosure over a shed repaint that didn't comply with aesthetic harmony, whatever that meant. The judge ordered the seized funds returned. Karrenna and her husband were indicted on 8 counts, including wire fraud and conspiracy. Both Glenn and Tracy entered plea deals in exchange for cooperation. By that summer, Willow Creek had a new interim board made up of residents who were actually elected. One of them, a retired teacher named Ruth, stopped by my place with a plate of blackberry cobbler and a thank you note signed by over 30 households. I kept the note pinned above my desk. One morning, I saw a kid standing by the barn, watching Jasper and whiskey. I walked out, asked if he was lost. "No," he said. "My mom said this is where the horses live that kicked the HOA out." I laughed for the first time in a while. They didn't kick anybody, they just made it clear trespassing ain't welcome. He grinned and looked up at Jasper. "Can I pet him?" I nodded. "Go slow, he'll let you know." Jasper lowered his head and the kid reached out, gentle and wide-eyed. The horse stood still, calm as a statue. As the breeze rolled over the fields, carrying the smell of cedar and earth, I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about land or fences or bylaws. This was about who gets to decide what kind of place a neighborhood becomes. And this time, we'd decided together. The barn stayed open. The cameras stayed up. And the community, once divided by fear and fines, was finally standing on solid ground. All because someone parked in the wrong place. And didn't understand that around here, even the horses know how to push back.